All right, everybody, it's time for our traditional introductions. So we're going to do that, and then while they're just getting the entrees, so that will take a little time. So let's start with Miranda. And and then go around.
I'm Maribel.
Can everybody hear?
Working for the Center for Investigation.
Yeah, up, speak.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I can do that, Sharon, but I'll try. I'm working for the Center for Investigative Reporting, freelancing for the New York Times, among others. I just spent 3 weeks in Macedonia editing for the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. I'm going back to Macedonia, do a little research on Macedonia, because it's very interesting. It's the Balkans from World War I all over again. And I'm going to teach journalism as a Fulbright there for 4 months starting in February.
All right. Okay. Brian.
I'm Brian DeBose. I work for myself. I'm currently a novelist, young adult novelist. Formerly journalist on the National Desk in Washington.
Hi, Viola DeBose, former Washington Post reporter. I left and went into education. I worked for the Obama administration. Now I'm home as an entrepreneur, and I'm the founder of Life After Journalism, which is a career change accelerator for journalists. I am changing the narrative in the media industry and helping journalists use their influence and power for any action or any cause that they're interested in.
You covered all my stuff.
I'm Michelle Smith. I am a now new investigative editor for USA Today.
All right, yay!
And I also handle the annual Black History Month special section. We're on issue 7. It's going to be very interesting.
Right.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Barfield-Berry, and I'm a Washington correspondent for USA Today, and we just finished elections.
Not over,
Right. You're not fearless to have finished your
Good evening, everybody. My name is Darren Snyder. I am my full-time job is a community relations manager with a nonprofit in Prince George's County. But I like to consider myself a journalist, and on my part-time job, I write a sports column for the Washington Times, i.e. the Fox News of newspapers. And I'm a long-time journalist with Gannett, 25 plus years. First job at USA Today. Also worked at Fort Myers News Press, so I have a relationship with the president. Thank you.
Great.
Paul Delaney. How far back should I go?
All the way back.
No, that's too far. I am currently retired. One would just no.
Take all.
I spent most of my career at the New York Times, but I've worked for the Washington Star, the Dayton Daily News, done editorial writing for the Baltimore Sun.
Don't forget where you met me at.
Associated Press. Also, I've done non-journalism, non-newspapers. I was chair of the journalism department at the University of Alabama, and I am still writing currently, working on a piece for USA Today.
Oh.
And I currently have a piece online at Columbia Journalism Museum.
All right. Yes. Okay, okay. Well, we'll get to you. You want to say something now or you want to wait? Okay, all right, we'll wait. Yeah, I'm Richard Prince. I write a column called Journal-ism, Journal-ism, about diversity issues in the newspaper, which I hope everyone will read now that they know it exists. Yeah. That's it.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah, as it turns out, yes. But I do have, other committee members, not just me, and they'll introduce. Well, Paul was one of them. He didn't mention that, and Betty Ann Williams, who we'll get to. So next.
I'm Pearl Stewart, and I'm getting food. And I'm a longtime veteran journalist, San Francisco Chronicle, Oakland Tribune, among others, and former journalism instructor at a bunch of different schools. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Let me get my food. Oh, wow. Good. The rice looks good. I'm Doreen Perez, and I am a multi-platform editor at the Washington Post.
Okay. Who's the shrimp?
Thank you.
Betty Ann, what's your next?
I'm Betty Ann Williams. I'm a former USA Today staffer, as a number of other people do. I also worked at the Democrat and Chronicle.
Yay.
And now I'm a freelance editor.
I'm Lynn Adrian. I am the director of the GC graduate program in broadcast and digital journalism for the Newhouse School at Syracuse, where my students come to Washington for their capstone and shoot, write, and edit their own pieces for small market television stations around the country, which then air their work. Previously was at ABC News, NBC, CBS, all of them. And I'm also on the advisory board for both Press Forward and the Power Shift project at the museum, which deals with Me Too and Time's Up issues.
I'm Peggy Lewis. Hi, everybody. I want to talk to you about your former journalist thing, because my background is reporter and anchor with WABC in New York, WPLG in Miami. Okay, I guess I wish I was at WABC. That was a Freudian slip. I spent time in the Clinton White House, with Alexis Herman to labor in the second term. Was director of communications for the Children's Defense Fund for 2 years, and then decided I wanted to teach. We went to Howard and taught for 10 years. And now
You know.
where I went to graduate school, I was there, and now I'm the executive dean of the School of Professional Studies and Business and Graduate School at Trinity Washington University. I'm exhausted.
Hi, I'm Terry Shaw. I work with.
Are you ready to up? Louder.
Oh, I'm Terry Shaw. I work with Richard at the Washington Post, the foreign desk, the home section. Then I became a Spanish interpreter. And I'm still working as a Spanish interpreter on the telephone from home.
Okay. Gloria, yeah.
Gloria Minot, excuse me, formerly Public Affairs Director for WPFW Radio.
Okay. Sharon?
I'm having fun being a wild child still. Southeast, Casablanca, and I'm so glad to be among my people.
Well, give her a full name though.
Sharon Farmer from Southeast.
Okay.
Tell us the rest. Tell us the rest.
Come on.
I know, right? I've been here since the Washington Post forever. I couldn't believe people have a full-time job being a photographer and didn't want to come to work. So I get 5 to 4 assignments a week and have a ball, save that money. I end up being a wild child, covering all the artists that I love around Washington, D.C. One thing does lead to another. The guy that hired me for the White House said he could look at a picture and know it was mine before he read the caption and see who it was. Your reputation can't get any better than that. This past weekend, I was at the Atlanta Photojournalism Seminar, talking to young folk about how you cover all this stuff and show my pictures. So I opened the Saturday show. Nobody wanted to come behind me. And at the end of the day, Carol Guzzi was the last photographer showing her work. Meanwhile, I'm having fun talking to young folks about how you look at things. And I tell them, if it's not moving, don't shoot it. The fun thing is, I had a banner of a hell of a year, so this cover photo is mine. Okay. And the other deal, besides having fun doing book cover, I am fortunate enough that people keep calling me to come to work. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. So I'm busy all the time, and it's a great thing. So what am I gonna do? Try to train some young people how to be like me, have the same attitude, don't take no prisoners.
There you go.
All right.
Here, here.
Okay. Love it.
Okay, Gene. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Gene Meyer, former Washington Post reporter and editor. I edit a quarterly Wadsworth magazine. I freelance for the New York Times, Bethesda magazine. I have a book, Fight for Freedom, the African American Soldiers in John Brown's Army. I've been going around talking to people about it. In case you're going to be in Petersburg this Saturday, I'm going to be at the Pamplin Museum of the Civil War Soldier, which I never heard of either. It's actually run by a family foundation, and so I'm going to be talking about my book. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff lined up, especially in February. So I'll have a little breathing room in between.
All right, very good.
Gene, I love it when white folk get to be Black History Month. That's so cool. I read Gene's book, look out.
It's available on Amazon or.
Hi, my name is Ivan Roman. I'm former executive director of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. I worked as in journalism in the Caribbean, Orlando, Sentinel, Rochester Times Union, which is where I met way back when,
And
Miami Herald, and Oral Herald, etc. And right now I'm doing freelancing for a news website in Puerto Rico on what's going on in Congress regarding Puerto Rico after the hurricane. I also work as a translator English Spanish and a communications consultant in immigration and education discrimination issues.
Okay. Okay, Andrew.
Hi, I'm Andrew Beaujon. I work at Washingtonian Magazine. Before that, I was at the Poynter Institute. I covered the media. And before that, I was at the Washington City paper. Happy to be here.
All right, very good. Happy to have you. Okay.
Here?
Yep.
Hello, my name is Blaine Alexander. I'm a Washington correspondent for NBC News Channel. So essentially, I'm on here on Channel 4, and if you have an NBC station in your local hometown, which you probably do, I'm honored to be the Washington reporter for that station. So I've been here less than 2 years in Washington, so still relatively new, I guess. Before that, I was an anchor and reporter in Atlanta at the NBC station for 6 years, WXIA. So I'm honored to be here and meet you, and I have Lynn to thank for bringing me to this gathering. So thank you. The rest of you.
Okay, Janice, yourself.
Okay. So I'm Janice Temple, and I am doing the live stream for this. I'm a normally I do Periscope, but now we're on YouTube, and so I am the first community curator for Black History Month, which is now turned into Own Voices on Periscope. And we have a partnership with the Twitter editorial staff and Twitter Blackbirds, and we will be celebrating March 1st, 1 year being the first community, and they've launched other communities. There is now hashtag Press Talk, and so we're looking for live streamers to share what it's like to be a journalist.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to mention earlier, when we got to Terry, the Terry is responsible for us being in this particular venue.
All right.
Because
Okay.
She knew it. She lives in the neighborhood and she knew about it. So
Okay.
we thank Terry. Thank you.
Okay.
For alerting us. Yeah. Now, I guess we can start talking too, in addition to, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Now, Vanessa Williams is not here, as I said earlier, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about the election.
Okay.
And I know that we have some thoughts about the coverage, for example. Tonight on CNN, for example, they are devoting, I think, 3 hours to redo of election night coverage because too many people, including number 45, think that the election only lasts as long as election day, and that things can happen once election day is over, such as absentee ballots, military ballots, blah, blah, blah. And that happened this year, so that while on election night, people were talking about, well, the blue wave never materialized, well, if you just waited 48 hours, people would have seen that it actually did. So that's one thing that we can talk about. Why, well, there have been various explanations for why that is, and a lot of it is because we speeded up the news cycle so much that everything has to be instant, even when the circumstances don't lend themselves to be instant. So what can be done about that? That's one thing. And I'm sure other people, I know that those other things came to mind, but I can't think of them right now. So what are some of the other things that we need to be talking about in terms of the election? One of the things I mentioned earlier that people said it was just not, I just wasn't paying attention, was that I saw the stories about the great percentage of women, the record number of women who have won office and also went to the polls. But I didn't see the connection made between that and the fact that Donald Trump is perceived by a lot of those women as being anti-woman, and that drove them to the polls. That a lot of people didn't connect those dots. Now, some people say I just missed it, so that's just another thing that came to my mind. But I'm sure there are other things that came to other people's attention, or some views they want to express about the coverage. So, what about Jim Acosta and all that?
Well, in April and.
Oh, yeah, why don't you talk about that?
Oh, no,
Oh, you still, all right. Well, of course, that happened afterward as well. In fact, oh yeah, that happened afterward. And in fact, I spent time today writing about the fact that CNN took the White House to court on First Amendment grounds for pulling Jim Acosta's press credentials. I was happy to see that. We had a whole discussion about the relationship of the White House. We've had several discussions, actually. The relationship of the White House to the press. And, a lot of people in the news media, we are always taught we have to stay out of the news. But there comes a point where somebody said today, one of the writers said, you can't continue to bring a reporter's notebook to a knife fight. And good line, yeah, I thought that. But anyway, so they went to court, and issuing statements is one thing, but it doesn't really get you from point A to point B. And so now it's at the courts, and we'll see what happens. And there was, of course, there was a racial overtone to a lot of that because of the 3 black women last week. But as others pointed out, this has happened earlier with Jorge Ramos being thrown out of press conferences and many encounters with who's the current person I gave? No. Jim Acosta, yeah. So there's that as well.
But they've never been called names and stuff like that.
Well, with Acosta, it got pretty close.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, with April.
With April, yeah, right.
And Abby was so nice.
Abby, yeah. But now Jorge Ramos, he got thrown out because he was objecting to the Mexicans being called, you're all criminals and all that stuff.
But that was during the campaign, though.
Yeah, that was during the campaign. Yeah, right. But then he became president, and he kept it up. I mean, Trump is. But anyway, all right. So let's talk about other aspects of the campaign. If other people have comments and observations to make.
I have a question. Have other news organizations joined that lawsuit?
We're the White House Correspondents Association is getting a group together, which we joined today to go get a meeting with the White House staff officer. So we are absolutely supportive of First Amendment rights. We're trying to figure out the way to be most helpful for them.
Oh, by the way, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists is meeting tomorrow with someone at the White House over there.
Yeah.
But it's someone, she's the head of the Office of Strategic Communications or something like that, but I've not really heard of. So I don't know how much power this person really has.
There's a reason for that.
Right, exactly. So it's nice that they're doing that, but as I said, I don't know what good could come of that, because, Trump is the one in charge, and, all of these other people can say what they want, but he's got his mind made up to do things. It seems like that's what goes down. So anyway, that's just my concern. All right, anybody else you want to do? Because we got an answer that USA Today is going to be part of the meeting with the White House Correspondents Association to decide.
Oh, they are? USA Today?
Yes, the White House Correspondents Association is putting together a meeting with Sarah Sanders and some of the other officials. And there's been emails going around today between all the bureau chiefs, and everybody's joining together for a meeting in the very near future.
Oh, there's no date, it's not like tomorrow.
I didn't see a date yet, but they're moving forward on it.
Okay, anybody else?
Does Bill Shine figure in all of this, or is it George Sanders and the president?
I'm not clear on what the role of communications director is in this White House operation. And that's Shine's job, I believe, right?
Right, I mean, I know the meeting that they're having, I think, is with Sarah Sanders, so I'm not sure where Bill Shine comes into that. It's a good question. Do you know, Deb? No, okay.
Okay, we exhausted that topic?
It just seems like there hasn't been enough of a response to what happened. I mean, considering the name calling that he did just seems so horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And the response to me seems tepid. But maybe that's just me, I don't know.
I agree, I just am expecting an Amy J to have more to say about it.
Exactly.
I'm expecting black journalists, particularly black male journalists, to have more to say about that. Because the one thing that is a constant thread when I'm hearing angry black women territory here is that we're not defended. People feel free in everyday life and in political life, as we see with April Ryan and Janelle Hill and Yamiche the other day. People just feel free to, yes, ma'am. People feel free to say whatever they feel like saying about black women, calling us out of our names, denigrating our skills, and so often we have nobody defending us for this. I can't help but wonder if these were four white women that have been talked about, the outcry that we would hear about how unfairly they've been treated. But we don't hear that, and I call upon not only the national media, USA Today included, to do something about that in defense, or at least awareness of that issue, but I call upon us to do the same thing.
Right, where's the NAACP?
Exactly.
Well, I know the Congressional Black Caucus has had a statement about this too. A lot of times, people say things, but they don't get covered, so it doesn't mean that, I mean, it's like if what's the saying, if a tree falls in the forest?
Right.
So, and April did had a piece in the Outlook section of the Post on Sunday.
Right.
So,
Does the White House Correspondents Association take up that issue specifically? Of the attack on black women? And if not, why not?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It seems like there would be an outcry of him saying, you ask a lot of stupid questions and just it was just horrible.
well, don't forget what he said about Don Lemon also, so it's not just women.
Oh, yeah, it goes back, yeah.
Right.
But this was just in a short
Right,
period of
right,
time.
exactly.
So he seemed to be in attack mode.
Mm-hmm.
One approach that I've heard discussed anyway, I'm not defending it, just describing it, is if you take the bait, then Trump gets to set up the press directly as an adversary and distracts from other things that are being covered. So there seems to be some sentiment to soft pedal the response, to channel the response, and try to get results rather than, yeah.
In fact, that reminds me of the other thing that's come out after the election, is the caravan coverage, quote unquote caravan coverage. How Trump was able to manipulate things so that got all this coverage right before the election to help him out. And then as soon as the election was over, what?
That was the media's fault.
Well, that's what I'm
We didn't have to
saying.
cover that. We all knew that those people were 1,000 miles away, walking. What are we sending cameras down there for? Come on, you can't.
But you know,
I understand.
I disagree completely with you.
And I know why you're gonna disagree, but I'm talking about from the perspective that he was talking about with, you know, the media was manipulated. I don't, if they're manipulated, it wasn't by Trump. I mean, I get that. We all knew what the situation was.
But I think you had to show that these were not
That's right.
That's right. You know.
But we didn't do that. We didn't really do that. I didn't feel like we really did that.
I mean, a lot of people did, yeah. They went down there and they saw what was in the caravan and who was there, who was not there, and they called them out on the fact that they weren't Middle Eastern terrorists and all that kind of stuff that he was saying. And with families there. I mean, the problem, I understand the whole take the bait argument, but he's gonna do this regardless of what happens. Whether you take the bait or you don't. And this is the kind of president that you need to confront. You need to confront him.
What about the thought of ignoring his tweets?
You can't ignore his
I don't know how you do that. Yeah, I don't know how you.
He has 2 million followers or whatever it is, 10 million followers. You can't ignore his tweets.
But there's the question about whether the tweets are news.
Exactly.
Not
Everything
everything he
he says
tweets is news.
Some of them are, some
How
of them
much
aren't.
airtime should go to?
Right, it's free airtime. It's, I mean, you know, he keeps us distracted from the real issues by dropping these, you know, word bombs, and everybody is covering it, knowing that it is crap.
Right.
So what would happen if it was ignored for a minute and the real issues were concentrated? We concentrate on the real issues.
They're doing a good job of saying
It's
it's
doing a
crap.
good job
though.
of keeping the
I'm
media
saying
tied up like, you know, like.
But the media are responding like, this is a lie, or this is crap. They
But
are.
the problem is the headline says, Trump says there's fraud in the Florida vote. Then you read down, there's no evidence of it. But the headline,
Right.
you know, the
Well, now,
headline
wait,
makes it
wait.
sound like.
Some news organizations do say
Without.
Trump falsely said so-and-so.
Yeah.
They would consider
They do, they
that.
said he falsely claimed.
Right.
Yeah, but
More and more.
But the point, Jay Rosen's been making this point for a while, and that by the way that we cover the falsehoods, we amplify them. Because you say them first, and then you say, which is, there's no evidence for them. And you become the megaphone.
I heard that.
And there may need to really be a rethinking totally about how to cover this president. A president, well, wait, Paul, including the fact that one of the real challenges is that he demands to be the center of attention. So if you don't cover him, he will say something else outrageous until you turn around.
That's true.
And that was one of the, it said that that's one of the reasons why he was unhappy in Europe, because he had to share the stage with all those other world leaders, and he was not the focus of attention. And that's not a comfortable place for him.
I think historically, we have the coverage of the White House historically by the major media, New York Times, Washington Post, the next, the three major nets. The idea has always been that coming out of the White House, we're going to cover the White House. No matter what it does, no matter what it says, it's going to be covered. And when I was at the Times, and I think even today, the best reporters were assigned to cover the White House. And it was usually two reporters, Washington Post, same thing. And every word uttered out of the White House was, if it wasn't page one, it was close to page one. And I think that is still the attitude that the press, that we now continue to follow. And we have not found a way to deal with that.
Because the other way that one might approach it, that some people have suggested, is you cover the White House. Of course, you have to cover the White House. The president is there, but you don't have to cover it with your major correspondents or.
And you don't have to cover every word that's
So you don't
uttered.
have to publish or
Every
broadcast
tweet.
everything he said.
Everything he
Right,
said.
but you can definitely cover it because you need to have eyes on it in
Yeah.
case something's going on.
But you don't have to put it on page one, for
Right.
example.
Sam Donaldson used to say that in some ways it was the most boring assignment that he had because you're stuck in the press pen and you don't get a chance to go out and actually do reporting. So if like CNN pulled all their correspondence out and sent an associate producer or something there to watch the White House.
Send an intern.
And then,
Send an intern.
well, that's not, that's better than an intern, but it's not with the assumption that they're always gonna be on air, and then put your Acostas and other people out and around the White House in Washington covering what's going on. That's one suggestion. I'm not saying that is the suggestion, but in 2018, I think we need to think about covering the White House differently.
I think we have to, when Sam Donaldson was there, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have a president who basically can connect directly with all these people. We're talking about a different reality. You know, when he puts out a tweet blasting the caravan, or he puts out a tweet, and by tweet, he announces that he's going to send all these people, all these military to the border, that's a story. Regardless of how you see it, how you cover it, whatever. The fact is, he can say all he wants, but he can implement some policy. He sent people to the border.
So when he implements policy, then we should cover that.
And
But not
those who
everything
cover
he
that-
says, something he says it's gone the next
But
day.
along with the border, along with his announcement of the border, there's everything else that he uses to justify that.
But for example, he said there was gonna be a great military parade, right? And the Pentagon
This
just
weekend.
said, forget it, we're not gonna do this. And so maybe, instead of announcing this big deal that there's gonna be this parade, tone it down a little bit, because you know the Pentagon's gonna say.
No, but he didn't say, they didn't announce there was gonna be a parade. He said he wanted one.
Right.
And then the Defense Department said, no, that doesn't make sense. And so
Right.
we covered the whole fact that there was a conflict about whether or not to have a parade.
There was a date. I mean,
There was a date,
It got canceled.
There was a date, but there was
it
a whole thing about, there was also coverage about the conflict of whether to have it.
Right.
And then finally, they didn't have it. So,
Because it cost too much, and the Pentagon put in the time, effort, and whatever magic was appropriate to make him recognize that it was too expensive and it would be a bad idea.
so
would
that
not be
coverage
perceived
had to happen.
But all right,
Yeah,
but
well,
when you
they-
cover that, do you cover the fact that during the recess, Mitch McConnell kept on having judicial nominees approved while other
You
people
also need
were
to
gone?
cover that too. And I saw the coverage, but not a lot of
Not
coverage.
much,
That was not covered.
That was not
That's
covered.
That's the problem.
That's what I'm
That's
saying, so
exactly
if you let him suck up all the oxygen with his tweets and we don't cover the other stuff,
It
there
doesn't
needs
get
to be a
And there's
rethinking of how
other
the
stuff
White
to be
House is
covered.
covered, yes.
You know,
But is that the White House, we have White House correspondents and we have congressional correspondents.
And you have editors.
And
you actually
so
make that
you know,
choice.
the fact that we're covering the White House to the nth degree has a lot more to do with the celebrity factor of Donald Trump and how he believes he can.
And Donald Trump, he has done this throughout his career.
Throughout his career.
And
What
you
is
can
disturbing,
continue
what
to free your time
disturbs me is that we're not focusing more as journalists on, instead of the noise machine, what you just talked about. Why are we focusing on what Mitch McConnell is actually doing in the United States Senate, leading into having a split government?
Or what's happening in the agencies, which are being
Yeah, that's the biggest
destroyed, all their work.
Totally ignored.
Destroyed. Interior, all those agencies.
You know, these are news management decisions. They're not, you can't blame Trump for decisions that producers and editors make
Yes.
to deploy their forces
Yeah.
to cover this clown as opposed to spreading that and covering the agencies that Terry just mentioned.
The clowns and
And you can't just, you've got all these people covering the White House. You only have a limited number of people.
Yeah.
And the number of reporters is way down what it was 10, 20 years ago. So the agencies, all these other things that we're concerned about are not getting covered. But these are management decisions. You really can't blame Trump for that.
But we're also talking about, I mean, he's a clown, but he's a clown that has generated a high degree of hate in this country. That is a story. And he started it from the campaign to now.
I think the hate is there. I think
I was gonna say,
amplified.
we just brought him out from under the rug.
He's
Amplified, but we have,
visible.
but we have seen over and over and over again in this country incidents where people are blasted for speaking Spanish or they're harassed and whatever because now they can do it because he's unable to do it. He's unable to do it. So that is a story.
Yeah.
So, you know, his generation of however he's doing it, he's generating that. He did it from the campaign, and he's doing it now. This whole caravan thing, that's part of it. But his fear that he tried to create, and there are people who believe in the fear. That is part of the story, because the people who believe the fear are acting in certain ways.
I think that, for me, news is two things. News is news. News is what happened. And news is also context. And I think that the challenge right now is that it's all news and no context.
Right.
Like, honestly, I can get from Twitter, frankly, even Access Hollywood covers some of the stuff that's happening. So there is no shortage of places that are telling me what's happening. But I feel like no one is telling me what it means. And that's what's so disturbing about the Trump era, because so much of the news is what happened, what happened, what happened. He said this, he said that, caravan's coming, you know, but it's not, what does it mean, you know? And so I just think context is missing. And that's important. Yeah, news analysis.
Context isn't tweetable.
It's not right.
But the reporters need to know that the reporters need to know the context so they can challenge
No, you have to have your editors telling you, I want context. I need you to go report that out.
But by the time you decide that you want context, Trump has moved. Because that's what he's always done, and he knows how to manipulate us. To move from the caravan's over. It didn't happen. And now he's moved. That is what he does. He knows how to do it. The problem is, we don't know how to counter it yet.
Wait a minute.
Let's ask about coverage. USA Today doesn't cover so-and-so happened yesterday anymore. Maybe it did in the beginning. The whole approach is context, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
The way you write a story is to bring the context into even the first day
Absolutely,
version of it.
absolutely. I mean, just a couple things. I've really enjoyed hearing this conversation. It's really helpful. You know, we don't cover every single Trump tweet, but I feel very strongly that we need to put the right information out there. And so it's really hard as a journalist to see false or misleading information and not correct it, because I think one of our major responsibilities is to bring clarity and truth to the conversation. So from that perspective, I will correct, or I will bring context to that. Certainly, we do cover the White House aggressively. We've also been expanding nationally with new hires we've been making, and we can talk a bit about that. And we're doing that purposefully because we don't want Washington to be the center of the universe. We know it's important to be in Houston, it's important to be in Atlanta, it's important to be in Portland, Oregon, that there's real stories and real people and real issues to be covered. And just one example of context, because I 100% agree with you. I don't know if you guys saw, and if you haven't, I hope you go back and look. We spent a considerable amount of time tracing back the lie about George Soros and the caravan, how it actually got started. I mean, we looked through tens of thousands of social media posts and tracked it down, and were able to show how these very extreme social media users are pushing these falsehoods out there and how they gain steam up until it got to the president's son. And I thought that was, to me, a really good example of context of explaining how these lies take place. So 100% agree with you on bringing context to the stories, and I appreciate you saying that because it's a big part of our mission.
And I think that got picked up because I saw on one of the network cable that whole thing about the tracing back the Soros lie.
Yes.
So it did get traction.
Good.
I mean, I think it got around.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that the good reporters are not just sitting there being stenographers. That's not how you cover the White House. If you look carefully at the stories about the good reporters, you'll find that most of it is them finding out things by phone work or talking to people or sources, like the Washington Post would say, according to 39 sources, so and so and so happened. So that's really more of what good reporting is, and there's more of it than I think we're giving the media credit for, especially in the leading newspapers, than just sitting there repeating what the president said. And we need more of that, and that also comes into your point about context.
I agree with you that the fragmentation of media and the proliferation of people who present themselves as journalists or news sources is making readers and news consumers they need to be more discerning about where they go for information. And a lot of people are not doing that, or so it seems to me. You can find the context if you're looking, but if you're going to use social media as your news source, that's not going to necessarily give it to you. It's out there, but it's not as easy to get it anymore because there are too many options for news consumers.
Can you talk about the realities of, you talk about how journalism has changed? A lot of times it feels like, and I can answer this too, but sometimes what we cover is driven by clicks. And who's clicking and clicking on. And they click on a Trump story in a minute. And if I write about a voter rights, it doesn't get as many clicks. So then how we can kind of juggle and try to figure out, so do we write good stories because it's good stories because they're good journalism, because they need to be told? Or do we write the Trump story because people are readers are clicking on it? So that's.
Well, part of that is how you write the story.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And not just how you write the story, it's also about the work you're putting into making sure that story is reaching the audience you need it to reach. You know, our philosophy is you have to do the important journalism, but then you also have to make sure it connects with people. So.
Can you talk about that? Because I'm curious now, having moved into communications and having had the responsibility of actually calling attention to things and working really hard to make sure that good work is connecting to the end user. How do you guys promote the work, make sure that stories that you think should go viral, that you help that? I mean, how do you do that?
We do it a lot of different ways. I mean, when we have, and Michelle can talk about that in her moment, we have a big investigative project, we really come together the whole promotional plan around that. What pieces will go on social media, at what time, and which social media platforms. How can we use outside media? How can we use partners to help spread the word? When we did the Wall Project, which hopefully many of you saw, not only did we do all of those traditional things, but we came up with the list. We hired an intern to come up with 7,500 people in the border states who would have an interest in this topic, from religious leaders, immigration leaders, border sheriffs, mayors, and we emailed them the story, and we emailed them a couple times and asked them to please read this and share this. So anything we're going to put, that we think is important and we're trying to spread, we put a lot of effort into how we get that to the right people. Yeah.
I think we've seen a problem with that in the campaign with the cable networks, when they would just air basically anytime he was speaking. So, and obviously he draws a lot of eyeballs.
Free press.
You can't take that from him. But, no other candidate was getting, wall-to-wall coverage of their rallies and stuff. So there's a draw to him. Some people like to look at the train wreck.
I think that the way that we consume social has changed since then too, because with USA Today speaking for that, it really was all about oh my God, look what he said now. But now that we're paying more attention, not only to just throwing something out there, but who we're throwing things out there, and philosophy that you guys are bringing in, reaching the right people with the right tweet, that's gotten better. So we've at least been able to step away from that, because that's frustrating. I agree with Deb, if you have a good story, especially with some of the things that I'm dealing with, Black history and civil rights. I've got to first sell that around the room, and then we have to deal with, how do we tweet it out and who do we tweet it to? So I think it's an improvement, but I do think that, the search for context is always there, and I think we can do better.
So Mike of M Tends to Travel, he's on the LA Times international desk. Yes, and he does #press talk, and he does context. That's what he does. That's what he's sharing, and that's what he wants journalists to do. And you can do it immediately. You go live, you talk about the stories, you share the stories, and he has lots of viewers.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, we didn't hear who you did.
Mike of M Tends to Travel. He started, Mike Oddie. Mike Oddie is the journalist. And so Periscope is comprised of former journalists That's what they are. The editorial team is, and they support journalism. They support the journalists. They support the stories. And they started a community channel called #Press Talk. And you can come on and you can talk about like business plans like that. That's amazing to me that that's part of news. That needs to be shared. I don't know that public knows that, you know? I don't think the public does. So they don't understand like the complete picture of journalism. There's a disconnect. There's something missing. And so Mike, he comes on and he shares. He goes live from his desk at the LA Times. That's what he does. And he gives tours of the newsroom. He's you know, doing assignments. He comes on, he talks about stories. He gives context. He shares about personal people that he knows. And I mean, you guys can come on and do follow-up stories to something that's, you know, personal or pressing to you, that's important to you. And so just contact Mike.
Hashtag what?
#Press Talk is the community channel on Periscope. Yeah. And so that's how you can give context. And I mean, since the president is on Twitter, you guys should be on Twitter where he is talking, you know, and responding, and you can do it instantaneously. You can do 100,000 stories compared to, you know, going through the process of typing it up and sending it out and, you know, choosing social media channels. Do the one that the president is on.
Somebody needs to be the tapping it up. Doing the research.
No. But yeah, you do the research. You do the research and you go live.
Yeah.
You do the research and you go live.
It's called hashtag.
Yes, #Press Talk is the community channel. So we're #Own Voices, and Mike is now, he is the community curator for #Press Talk, which is the new news channel for journalists, and they want journalists to join in. That's what they're looking to do. And the Periscope editorial team, Ariel, she's a former journalist. I don't know her background, but they have 7 or 8 people around the world: Australia, London, I think Ariel's in San Francisco, Twitter headquarters, and then some other locations. And they monitor 24 hours a day what's happening on Twitter, and they elevate the views. When you connect with them, they will elevate your stories and give you voice. And so that's the partnership. And so right now, when Trump goes on, a lot of people are covering him, and then we come on and we talk. You know, you have, I mean, at Own Voices, we've come on and we've given like context. We come on and share our personal experiences about the election, or we allow people to come on and share too. So.
How are people keeping up? I'm just constantly amazed with the lies, and I think some of the broadcast media are doing a pretty good job. But how do they keep up with the fact checking? Because so much of the stuff that comes, not just from Trump, but the White House in general, is not true and turns out to be not true, especially anything with numbers, anything they just make up
I
numbers.
see tweets about it all the time.
But there's so much of it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It comes the lies come so fast and furiously
Yeah.
that it's difficult to keep up. That is, you're checking and reporting on, you know, one lie, and another one comes up.
Right.
And so they keep repeating themselves so rapidly.
It seems like there needs to be new models for
But how do we keep up?
fact checking or something. Because I mean, I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
As much as they can.
as much as they can.
Right.
Okay. Now, we haven't taken full advantage of our speakers here, so I'd like to hear a little more about USA Today, and particularly about diversity, because some of us, I think Betty Ann and Ron and myself, were at Gannett at the time when Gannett was considered the leader in the industry on diversity, which is no longer the case. But I'm told that they're trying to regain some of that ground, so I'd like to hear some about that. And also just in general about how USA is doing in terms of the product, and what have your aims changed since it began? I mean, it started out as being a place, a product that people who are in news deserts or who have lousy local newspapers could find some quality journalism. Is that still what it's all about? Just talk about that if you would. But don't forget the diversity part.
No, we should start with the diversity part,
Yes.
actually. So, thank you all for having me here. This has been a really great conversation. I'm glad to be part of this. Just listening to where everybody is from and what you do, I was actually really struck by all the many connections to things that I care deeply about. From Miami, which is my hometown, to the AP, where I started my career, of course USA Today, Spanish, because that's my first language. So it's just really interesting, all the many connections to my life in this room. I have been with the Gannett Company for 23 years. Started back in late 1995, 96, at the Rockford Register-Star. I went there after I married my husband, who was a TV anchor and reporter in that market, and I left the AP to go take on the agriculture beat at the Rockford Register-Star. So a little bit different world. But that was my introduction to the Gannett Company. And it's a place where, much like Nicole, who's also, like I like to say, grown up at Gannett, it's a place that has afforded a tremendous amount of opportunity and invested in its own people over time. And I remember having the "We're number one in diversity" pin that I wore at every conference, and I was very proud of that, and I still am very proud of the commitment of this company to diversity. We were remarking a little bit at the beginning of dinner about the fact that, Janice asked, is it weird or how do you feel being two women in charge of this media company? And, it's weirder outside of our walls than it is inside, because inside the number of women in senior leadership positions might just outnumber the men, actually. And when you look at the broader company, even beyond news and the consumer division, which I run, our CFO is a female, our chief legal officer is a female. My counterpart, who runs the marketing services division, is also a woman. So this has been for us something that is just the norm at Gannett. We have been, Nicole and I are both very passionate about this, and I'm going to let her speak to some of the things she's been doing specifically in the USA Today newsroom since she came on board in March. But we have a tremendous commitment to expanding our diversity at all levels of the company, but we've really focused of late on the leadership ranks. And so when you look at the number of promotions being made and the people of color and the number of women that are entering, more senior roles, in terms of our new hires, that's been another key area of focus for us. The regional structure, the local side, 109 local community news organizations that report up to me. Randy Lovely, who heads up news there, has been at the fore of driving this, and today of his regional editor structure, 5 of 8 regional leaders are people of color. So this is something that remains at the core of our values, and we don't just talk about it. The hires we're making, the moves we're making are all meant to continue to expand that very important commitment. So, Nicole, would you?
Yes, I've grown up in Gannett too. I've been with the company for 21 years, and my first job out of college and with Gannett was at the El Paso Times, which I loved and still have a lot of great connections there. Became a loaner to USA Today. Like we were just sharing loaner stories. Ended up back in the Years of Republic for the past 19 years, and then came back to USA Today in March. I've been there for about 8 years. 8 years. It feels like 8 years. 8 months. It's been 8 months.
Time's supposed to fly when you're
Yeah,
having fun.
exactly. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. My priorities when I got there were to increase our investigative reporting, to help grow our national network and national hiring, and to make sure we're still innovating in the way we reach audiences and the way we present news. And of course, the foundation of all of that is making sure we have a diverse staff and that we reflect the communities we serve. So just because I'm a journalist, I don't want to get it wrong. I want to just give you guys some numbers on where we're at. We have work to do, but some numbers on where we're at. So in 2017, last year, our total journalists, the diversity was 21.1%. Out of managers, it's 14.7%. Those are not numbers that we want to stay at. We want to make those up.
For USA Today.
Yeah, USA Today. Currently, so again, since March and the hires we've been making, we've increased the diversity to 23.4% and the managers to 21.4%, which is a big jump from 14.7 to 21.4. Of the hires I've made, and there's been a lot because we're really growing our network, the hires I've made since March, about 40% are people of color, which I'm very proud of. We're getting the best and the brightest. And then of the promotions, 50% have been journalists of color. So we're walking the walk. It's very important to us. And again, we're not talking about it, we're doing it. And we're seeing great results. We're seeing audience growth. We're seeing great journalism. We're seeing great community engagement. And super proud of the work we're doing. There's still more to be done, but really proud of where we've come in 8 months.
Okay. Would you have any estimate of the percentages in, say, the 90s, the mid-90s, when you all joined?
I wish I had that at my fingertips. I'm happy to come back to you with that because we've always posted, published that, and proudly so. So we can go back and look at that.
Those numbers probably stand up pretty well in the industry today, and the comparison, I don't think you will suffer much with the comparison, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm also part of ASNE, and they've had to delay the study this year. They didn't have enough people participate, which is a shame. So, you're part of these groups, get your newsroom to participate. But when I was talking to the head of ASNE about how I really want to improve our numbers, she kept saying, you guys are, like you're saying, you guys are actually doing okay. I'm like, we're not doing okay, but I think that reflects on the industry and the work we have to do.
I think we're never satisfied, and it goes to Richard's point of what kind of news organization are you, and are you still trying to be what it was at the heart? And yes is the answer. I mean, we set out with USA Today certainly to be the news organization that truly reflects the nation. And when we speak about the broader network, we speak about being nationwide, and we're very purposeful in that word because it speaks to our deep roots in communities all across this country. And we feel very much it's our responsibility to give voice to the people and the issues that sometimes get lost, not sometimes, often get lost in all this noise that we just spent the first half hour of this conversation talking about. And we feel very much that that's our turf. That's what we do. We make sure that it's the people who live between DC and LA who we're focused on covering, and we can't do that well. I don't need to tell anybody in this room if we're not reflecting the people who live in those communities. And so that's how we look at it, and that's why it's so important. So yes, our numbers may be better in some cases than others, but that doesn't mean it's good enough.
Right.
Well, can you give us some examples of how these numbers are reflected in the coverage? In other words, what will we see if we pick up USA Today? What will we see that we don't see in other news outlets?
I would encourage you. We just hired Monica Rohr in Houston. I don't know if you guys know her.
Yes.
She is doing great work around gender and diversity. In particular, I'm really proud of the work we did around the Border Patrol shooting. There was a Border Patrol agent who shot 4 women, and the media coverage at the time was a Border Patrol agent shot 4 prostitutes. And all of us were so frustrated by that because these were women who had lives and they were being just dismissed as poor prostitutes. And so Monica and Rick Jervis and our whole team went and told their stories and told them as mothers and sisters and daughters and the lives they led beyond, where they ended up. And so I'm really proud of that type of work. And I think that is a true reflection of our diversity and the passion we have about bringing those stories to people.
Okay.
What about with election coverage? Since you are more, you have better diversity numbers, are there trends that you saw out of this election cycle, especially with the women and the people who are running, that you think that you had to jump on some of the other coverage?
I think everybody saw the wave of women coming. I don't think that was exclusive to us, but I think we worked really hard to cover that in lots of diverse ways. In fact, I don't know if you saw one of the most recent stories we did was about how women are running with strength, but without losing being a woman. They're not running as men, they're running as women. I think our headline was Badass Women, So I do think, I think about, the Supreme Court hearings. I think about the Kavanaugh hearings. And this isn't about whether you believe him or her or what you feel about it, but I think because of the diversity of our newsroom, we talked a lot about the feelings that were coming up and about how women, again, not saying who you believe or what you think, but just a discussion around sexual assault and how that impacted people. We had one of the things I'm really proud of, in addition to some of our coverage, is we created a diversity committee in the newsroom. The first time we've had a USA Today newsroom diversity committee. Several functions. One is to help educate us and bring in speakers and do audits of our own work, and make sure that we're holding up a mirror and holding ourselves accountable. Bringing in people to help have discussions with us around hot topics in the news, and also a place to discuss things in our coverage internally, like we said this, and how did we handle that, and to have really honest, frank conversations. And so one example from that is we had around the Kavanaugh hearings, and it sort of became more of a Me Too discussion. We had some folks come in, and I don't know if Michelle or Debbie are part of that, but they talked about how Me Too has really taken the public face of a white woman's issue, and that the women of color have been left behind in the Me Too movement in the media coverage. And so we took that immediately and went out and did a story about that. I was a guest editor on Google News, and they let me pick 10 stories. I wanted the Google universe, and that was number one. And so I'm really proud that a guest speaker we had in the diversity committee that opened our eyes to this and created a discussion, created a story that was on USA Today and the topic of Google News, because we have a diversity committee. I was just really excited about that.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
I was wondering, how you measure community engagement, and what do you define as that? I mean, what does it look like when you're talking about the increase in community engagement?
It's everything from hard metrics like time spent on our stories to engagement on social media, how many interactions, how many shares, how many comments we get on a story. It's also, we do a lot of events in our communities, and so it's who's showing up to these events, who's participating in these events. What are some more, those are some of the top of mind ones about engagement. It's, we do a lot of crowdsourcing. We put out, hey, tell us your story about X, and we want to get those stories back.
That's one of the most recent examples of that was incredibly moving. I don't know if you all saw the more than year-long investigation into maternal death rates, and how it's just exponentially higher and growing in the U.S. relative to all other developed nations. And so this was a really big deal story, but how do you tell that story without giving the space to the women who've experienced these, harm come to them, the 50,000 who experience this. And so with this investigation was a whole series of videos told just the voices of these women, and each one of them was, I am one of the 50,000. And since that published, the number of women who have come to us to also tell their story and add to that library is remarkable. And it speaks to, of course, we touched on a really important issue that needs addressing in the country. It also resonated very deeply with women, and they trust us enough then to come and tell their story. So to me, that's a huge sign of that engagement that we're building.
Absolutely.
I had heard about that. Not that I was in a place where they actually publish it, but through other people I had heard about.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, these people go to the events you talk about? Do they reflect the community? Who are they?
That's a very big goal of ours. We have a storytelling project. It's storytellers.com. If you want to go to it, we have it in more than 20 cities around the country. And I love storytellers, and I also love Megan Finnerty, the founder, is her passion to diversity and reflecting our communities. There's usually 7 tellers on a stage, and I guarantee you will not go to an event and not see a diverse reflection of our communities on that stage. It is a passion point of hers. And so we hope by putting out that diverse storytelling will attract a diverse audience, and we actually measure it. We do surveys of the audience, tell us a little about yourself, would you come to another event like this? At the same time, are you interested in other types of coverage? So we're trying to make that very personal connection with the audience. And we're pretty proud of the diversity in storytellers. So you can go to the website and you have all the stories there. And I encourage you to go look at them. I think you'll spend some time there. You'll get sucked in. I know I do every time I go there.
I have a question. I remember, way back in the day when we had like 20, 30-page special sections, and the page was so fat and so thick. And so,
We still do sometimes.
The last few times I picked it up, it seems a little thin, and I know like it's a terribly difficult climate for print products, especially print products that don't have paywalls, I'm imagining, and monetizing this whole course of print journalism. How is that going, and is that something that you can continue to do in the present format that you're doing?
Yes, first it's a great question. The print part of our business remains very large, and in some cases very strong. It's also, as we all know, under a lot of pressure. That doesn't stop us from doing the important things we feel we need to do, and frankly that our readers greatly appreciate. A recent example of a very fat special section was the entire tribute to John McCain following his death that was produced at the Arizona Republic in Phoenix and distributed nationwide. And we sold that on newsstands, and we offered it to our subscribers, and it was incredibly well received and well read, and I think appreciated. So we pick our spots for things like that, to the topics or the issues or the people who are going to resonate, and where it's going to make sense to do that. We are not in the business of putting out, multiple weeklies and special sections and other things like that we used to do, but it doesn't make as much economic sense. It also doesn't make as much readership sense. People don't have as much time to read. They're not spending time with us that way. And so we are very much putting, we're being much more calculated and very prescriptive about what is it that we're willing to spend our resources on, and why, and for whom, and what do they need out of it, and so that's definitely changed things somewhat. But that doesn't mean that when it makes sense, as in the case of that special section, that we don't put a lot of firepower behind it.
I would ask Michelle, how many pages is the Black History Month special section?
I did 26.
Is the corporation profitable?
I'm sorry, I just follow up. You keep doing that without like a paywall, or is that something that you think is coming?
What, say it again?
The paywall.
Oh, paywall.
Are you talking about USA Today specifically? So we actually introduced, you may not know this, we introduced an ad-free version of the USA Today app. It's an upsell to our current app, native app on your iPhone or Android device, that has a decent number of subscribers. And we also have digital subscribers to an e-edition of USA Today. And those are two ways. We are actually exploring other potential paths to maybe some premium sections of USA Today or offerings that might make sense, or in combination with some of our local sites that might make sense. But the USA Today business is strong. It's a majority digital business today, and that's something we're very proud of. And it is grown, really, really significantly from an audience perspective.
And I was just following up, sort of, wondering if the corporation is profitable. When we worked at USA Today and Gannett, the company had television stations
Yes.
as well as a print product.
Yes.
It did not have a digital footprint like you have now.
Yes.
So the whole operation is different. Is it profitable?
I would refer you to our earnings report released just last Thursday, in which the answer is a resounding yes. We are most definitely a profitable company.
Brings back memories, doesn't it, guys? Scenes in the newsroom where USA Today was perceived as sucking the life out of the papers around the country. That's
We
what
operate very differently today than we once did. You know, I remember when I first joined the corporate team in late 2009, USA Today and US Community Publishing were two separate divisions of the company, much less broadcast was. And we didn't have a ton of interaction amongst those divisions. We didn't really, everyone had their own separate resources and conducted their own businesses. And today we don't operate that way. We had, even before we spun the company, we had started to behave differently. But today, USA Today and all those local properties all report up into one business unit. And that's the business I run. And Nicole leading the news organization at USA Today and Randy Lovely leading it for the community sites work side by side. Their offices are literally next to each other. And so they are looking across the entire network and coordinating on coverage. And you know, it definitely is a 1 + 1 = 3 situation.
Right, I mean, we act as one newsroom. I think a good example of that right now are the wildfires out in California. We have our San Francisco Bureau and LA Bureau for USA Today working with Redding, working with Palm Springs, working with Ventura, some Phoenix folks have gone in, some Reno folks have gone in. So we truly, it doesn't really matter who you report to. Right now, we are one team covering these really terrible wildfires. And to me, what a great strategic advantage that is, right? To be able to call on these resources when you need to and have that local expertise. And we're not parachuting into these communities, we're in these communities. So it just gets better and better when we work together. Yeah.
Talking about the numbers nowadays, and they sound really good. What about retention efforts? What do you have in place to get them and get folks in there?
Yeah, and just full disclosure, I have the departure numbers too, just to be fully transparent. So 2018, departures from USAT, we had 22 departures and 26.9% were diverse. So that is a concern. One thought is the diversity committee and just really making sure that we have a place where all voices are heard and all voices are encouraged. I hope that's the entire newsroom, but I know sometimes people feel more comfortable in that group to discuss things. You know, I really believe that when you have opportunities, you need to look around the room and you need to give people opportunities to help them grow. I think people stay for growth and opportunities as much as they stay for salary or any other thing, right? And so when we did the wall project in Arizona, I purposely went and, you know, I don't know if this is true or not, so just putting that out there, but the journalists worked on it. They're convinced that it is the most diverse staff to win a Pulitzer because we had so many journalists of color working on that, and that was 100% on purpose. As we were going through there, it's not just people with the most experience or the people with beat expertise, because I say all the time, these are the projects that make careers, and if you keep giving them to the same people, those same careers get getting made. So you've got to look around the room and you've got to bring new people in, even if they're not ready, but let's get them ready. Let's give them that opportunity. So I think that's one big thing with retention is just making sure we're every day looking at the opportunities ahead of us and looking at how can we help somebody grow through this opportunity. And I think that's a great retention tool.
Let me just touch on one topic we haven't talked about, and that before you all have to leave, and that is the fact that you're both women leading the newsroom and the publication. And is there a difference? I mean, I went to one of the early Me Too conferences when they talked about how it makes a difference when women are in charge because they're more sensitive to certain issues such as family issues about women. the case in USA Today? Talk about that if you would.
I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or I'm a mom or I'm just that kind of person, but I tell people if we want the best and brightest in this industry, we have got to be flexible. We have got to let people work the hours they need to work to be able to have a personal life, whether that be a family, whether it be a parent, whether it be something they're very passionate about. So my philosophy is all about results. Like I care about impact and I care about results. And I don't care if you do that, in our newsroom or remotely, or if you do it at midnight, as long as you're getting the results. And I think by doing that, we're able to attract, just a really great, rich talent pool. And again, I don't know if I would attribute that to being, a woman. I think that's just who I am as a manager. I do have 3 kids. I have been through that, and I hear from a lot of women in the newsroom. They'll come in and they'll start talking about something, and they'll finally say, okay, how did you do this? I have a baby and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, look, you know what, we're gonna make this work for you, because if not, we're gonna lose you, and that's a shame for this industry. So tell me what you need, I'll tell you what I need, and we're gonna make this work. And again, it doesn't have to be about babies, it could be about aging parents, it could be, a spouse, and there's all kinds of reasons that people need to make flexibility work for them.
Okay, Gordon. You want to add anything?
It's a big underscore, but I literally spent a good chunk of my week last week identifying a room to convert to a lactation room for our staff. And so, it seems like a small thing, but, again, not because you're women, but I think it is because there's a certain level of sensitivity that we have to be open and flexible and work differently, and that's what's going to keep all the best and brightest with us.
Okay. One other thing, and that's the flap that took place last month, I guess it was, on the op-ed page when you ran the Donald Trump piece. Yes. And there were a lot of falsehoods in there. Were there any lessons learned from that experience?
I got a lot of messages on Twitter, some of them not so nice. So one of the ones I really appreciated, someone said USA Today had a sequencing problem, and I 100% agree. A sequencing problem. Okay. If you look at the full package, we had a column from Donald Trump, we had a response from Bernie Sanders, we had a fact check, we had a column from our public reader, a public editor. We just didn't have them all at the same time, and if we could redo it, we would have had those at the same time. We would have fact checked it in real time.
Okay, very good. Okay, I know you all have to leave. Are there any final questions? Well, let's give them a hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, this was lovely. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
This restaurant, oh my God.
Oh, that's
Yes.
wonderful.
Oh,
And you're welcome to come to our holiday party. We'd love to have you. December 1st, Saturday night.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good.
Okay. Thank you. Smile.
Bye, thank you.
I will continue to collect